Perks of Being a Wallflower, February 23rd, 1992. Dear friend, I was sitting in the waiting room of the clinic. I had been there for an hour or so. I don't remember exactly how long. Bill had given me a new book to read, but I just couldn't concentrate on it. I guess it makes sense why not. Then I tried to read some magazines, but again, I just couldn't. It wasn't so much that they mentioned what the people were eating, it was all the magazine covers. Each one had a smiling face, and every time it was a woman on the cover, she was showing her cleavage. I wondered if those women wanted to do that to look pretty, or if it was just part of the job. I wondered if they had a choice or not, if they wanted to be successful. I just couldn't get that thought out of my mind. I could almost see the photo shoot and the actress or model going to eat a light lunch with her boyfriend afterward. I could see him asking her about her day and how she wouldn't think too much of it, or maybe if it was her first magazine cover, how she would be very excited because she was starting to become famous. I could see the magazine on the newsstands and a lot of anonymous eyes looking at it, and how some people would think it was very important. And then how a girl like Mary Elizabeth would be very angry about the actress or model showing her cleavage along with the other actresses and models doing the same thing, while some photographer like Craig would just look at the quality of the photograph. Then I thought there would be some men who would buy the magazine and masturbate to it. And I wondered what the actress or her boyfriend thought about that, if they did at all. And then I thought that it was about time for me to stop thinking because it wasn't doing my sister any good. That's when I started thinking about my sister. I thought about the time when she and her friends painted my fingernails and how that was okay because my brother wasn't there. And the time she let me use her dolls to make up plays or let me watch whatever I wanted to watch on TV. And when she started becoming a young lady and no one was allowed to look at her because she thought that she was fat. And how she really wasn't fat. And how she was actually very pretty. And how different her face looked when she realized boys thought she was pretty. And how different her face looked the first time she really liked a boy who was not on a poster on her wall. And how her face looked when she realized she was in love with that boy. And then I wondered how her face would look when she came out from behind those doors. My sister was the one who told me where babies come from. My sister was also the one who laughed when I immediately asked her where babies go to. When I thought that, I started to cry, but I couldn't let anyone see me because if they did, they might not let me drive her home, and they might call our parents. And I couldn't let that happen because my sister was counting on me, and this was the first time anyone ever counted on me for anything. When I realized that this was the first time I cried since I made my Aunt Helen the promise not to cry unless it was for something important, I had to go outside because I couldn't hide it from anyone anymore. I must have been in the car for a long time because eventually my sister found me there. I was chain smoking cigarettes and crying still. My sister knocked on the window. I rolled it down. She looked at me with curious expression. Then her curiosity turned to anger. "Charlie, are you smoking?" She was so mad. I can't tell you how mad she was. "I can't believe you're smoking." That's when I stopped crying and started laughing. Because of all the things she could have said right after she got out of there, she picked my smoking. And she got angry about it. And I knew if my sister was angry, then her face wouldn't be that different. And she would be okay. "I'm going to tell Mom and Dad, you know." "No, you're not." God, I couldn't stop laughing. When my sister thought about it for a second, I think she figured out why she wouldn't tell Mom or Dad. It's like she suddenly remembered where we were and what had just happened and how crazy our whole conversation was considering all that. Then she started laughing. But the laughing made her feel sick, so I had to get out of the car and help her into the back seat. I had already set up the pillow and blanket for her because we figured it was probably best for her to sleep it off a little in the car before we went home. Just before she fell asleep, she said, "Well, if you're going to smoke, crack the window at least." Which made me start laughing again. "Charlie, smoking? I can't believe it." Which made me laugh harder, and I said, "I love you." And my sister said, "I love you too. Just stop it with the laughing already." Eventually, my laughing turned into the occasional chuckle, and then it just stopped. I looked back and saw that my sister was asleep. So I started the car and turned on the heater so she would be warm. That's when I started reading the book Bill gave me. It's Walden by Henry David Thoreau, which is my brother's girlfriend's favorite book, so I was very excited to read it. When the sun went down, I put my Smoky pamphlet on the page where I stopped reading and started driving home. I stopped a few blocks from our house to wake up my sister and put the blanket and pillow in the trunk. We pulled into the driveway. We got out, we went inside, and we heard our mother and father's voices from the top of the stairs. "Where have you two been all day?" "Yeah, dinner's almost ready." My sister looked at me. I looked at her. She shrugged. So I started talking a mile a minute about how we saw a movie and how my sister taught me how to drive on the highways and how we went to McDonald's. "McDonald's? When?" "Your mother cooked ribs, you know." My father was reading the paper. As I talked, my sister went up to my father and gave him a kiss on the cheek. He didn't look up from his paper. "I know, but we didn't go to McDonald's until before the movie, and that was a while ago." And then my father said matter-of-factly, "What movie did you see?" I froze, but my sister came through with the name of a movie just before she kissed my mother on the cheek. I had never heard of this movie. "Was it any good?" I froze again. My sister was so calm. "It was okay. Those ribs smelled great." "Yeah," I said, and then I thought of something to change the subject. "Hey, Dad, is the hockey game on tonight?" "Yeah, but you're only allowed to watch it with me if you don't ask any of your stupid questions." "Okay, but can I ask one now before it starts?" "I don't know. Can you?" "May I asked, corrected. He grunted. "Go ahead." "What do the players call a hockey puck again?" "A biscuit. They call it a biscuit." "Great, thanks." From that moment and all through dinner, my parents didn't ask any more questions about our day, although my mom did say how glad she was that my sister and I were spending more time together. That night, after our parents went to sleep, I went down to the car and got the pillow and blanket out of the trunk. I brought them to my sister in her room. She was pretty tired, and she spoke very softly. She thanked me for the whole day. She said that I didn't let her down, and she said that she wanted it to be our little secret since she decided to tell her old boyfriend that the pregnancy was a false alarm. I guess she just didn't trust him with the truth anymore. Just after I turned out the lights and opened the door, I heard her say softly, "I want you to stop smoking. You hear?" "I hear. Because I really do love you, Charlie." "I love you too." "I mean it." "So do I." "Okay then, good night." "Good night." That's when I shut the door and left her to sleep. I didn't feel like reading that night, so I went downstairs and watched a half an hour long commercial that advertised an exercise machine. They kept flashing a 1-800 number, so I called it. The woman who picked up the other end of the phone was named Michelle, and I told Michelle that I was a kid and I did not need an exercise machine, but I hoped she was having a good night. That's when Michelle hung up on me, and I didn't mind a bit. Love always, Charlie. March 7th, 1992. Dear friend, girls are weird, and I don't mean that offensively. I just can't put it any other way. I have now gone on another date with Mary Elizabeth. In a lot of ways, it was similar to the dance, except that we got to wear more comfortable clothes. She was the one who asked me out again, and I suppose that's okay, but I think I'm going to start doing the asking from time to time because I can't always hope to get asked. Also, if I do the asking, then I'll be sure to go out with the girl of my choice if she says yes. It's just so complicated. The good news is that I got to be the one who drove this time. I asked my father if I could borrow his car. It happened at the dinner table. "What for?" My dad gets protective of his car. "Charlie's got a girlfriend," my sister said. "She's not my girlfriend," I said. "Who is the girl?" my father asked. "What's going on?" my mother asked from the kitchen. "Charlie wants to borrow the car," my dad replied. "For what?" my mother asked. "That's what I'm trying to find out," my father said with a raised voice. "No need to get snippy," my mother said. "Sorry," my father said without meaning it, and then he turned back to me. "So, tell me about this girl." So, I told him about Mary Elizabeth, leaving out of the part about the tattoo and belly button ring. He kind of smiled for a little while, trying to see if I was already guilty of something. Then he said yes. I could borrow his car. When my mother came in with coffee, my father told her the whole story while I ate dessert. That night, as I was finishing my book, my father came in and sat on the edge of my bed. He lit a cigarette and started telling me about sex. He gave me this talk a few years ago before, but it was more biological then. Now he was saying things like, I know I'm your old man, but you can't be too careful these days. And wear protection. And if she says no, then you have to assume she means it. Because if you force her to do something she doesn't want to do, then you're in big trouble, mister. And even if she says no and really means yes, then quite frankly, she's playing games and isn't worth the price of dinner. If you need to talk to somebody, you can come to me. But if you don't want to do that for some reason, talk to your brother. And finally, I'm glad we had this talk. Then my father ruffled my hair, smiled, and left the room. I guess I should tell you that my father isn't like on television. Things like sex don't embarrass him, and he is actually very smart about them. I think he was especially happy because I used to kiss this boy in the neighborhood a lot when I was very little. And even though the psychiatrist said it was very natural for little boys and girls to explore things like that, I think my father was afraid anyway. I guess that's natural, but I'm not sure why. Anyway, Mary Elizabeth and I went to see a movie downtown. It was what they called an art movie. Mary Elizabeth said it won an award at some big film festival in Europe, and she thought that was impressive. As we waited for the movie to start, she said what a shame it was that so many people would go to see a stupid Hollywood movie, but there were only a few people in this theater. Then she talked about how she couldn't wait to get out of here and go to college where people appreciate things like this. Then the movie started. It was in a foreign language and had subtitles, which was fun because I had never read a movie before. The movie itself was very interesting, but I didn't think that it was very good because I didn't really feel different when it was over. But Mary Elizabeth felt different. She kept saying it was an articulate film, so articulate. And I guess it was. The thing is, I didn't know what it said, even if it said it very well. Later, I drove us to this underground record store, and Mary Elizabeth gave me a tour. She loves this record store. She said it was the one place where she felt like herself. She said that before coffee shops were popular, there was nowhere for kids like her to go except the big boy, and that was old until this year. She showed me the movie section and told me about all these cult filmmakers and people from France. Then she took me down to the import section and told me about real alternative music. Then she took me to the folk section and told me about girl bands like the Slits. She said she felt really bad she hadn't gotten me anything for Christmas, and she wanted to make it up to me. Then she bought me a record by Billie Holiday and asked if I wanted to go to her house and listen to it. So I was sitting alone in her basement while she was upstairs getting us something to drink. And I looked around the room, which was very clean and smelled like people didn't live there. It had a fireplace with a mantel and golf trophies. And there was a television and a nice stereo. And then Mary Elizabeth came downstairs with 2 glasses and a bottle of brandy. She said that she hated everything her parents loved, except for brandy. She asked me to pour the drinks while she made a fire. She was very excited too, which was strange because she just never liked that. She kept talking about how much she loves fires and how she wanted to marry a man and live in Vermont someday, which was strange too because Mary Elizabeth never talks about things like that. When she finished the fire, she put on the record and kind of danced over to me. She said she felt very warm, but not in a temperature sense. The music started, and she clinked my glass, said cheers, and took a sip of brandy. Brandy is very good, by the way, but it was better at the Secret Santa party. We finished the first glasses very quickly. My heart was beating really fast, and I started to get nervous. She handed me another glass of brandy and touched my hand very softly when she did it. And then she slipped her leg over mine, and I watched it just dangle there. Then I felt her hand on the back of my neck, just kind of moving slowly, and my heart started beating crazy. "Do you like the record?" she asked, real quiet. "Very much. I really did, too. It was beautiful." "Charlie?" "Mm-hmm." "Do you like me?" "Mm-hmm." "You know what I mean." "Mm-hmm." "Are you nervous?" Mm-hmm. Don't be nervous. Okay. That's when I felt her other hand. It started at my knee and worked its way up the side of my leg to my hip and stomach. And then she took her leg off mine and kind of sat on my lap facing me. She looked right into my eyes and she never blinked. Not once. Her face looked warm and different, and she leaned down and started kissing my neck and ears, then my cheeks, then my lips, and everything kind of melted away. She took my hand and slid it up her sweater, and I couldn't believe what was happening to me, or what breasts felt like, or later, what they looked like, or how difficult bras are. After we had done everything you can do from the stomach up, I lay down on the floor and Mary Elizabeth put her head on my chest. We both breathed very slowly and listened to the music and the fire crack. When the last song was over, I felt her breath on my chest. Charlie? Mm-hmm. Do you think I'm pretty? I think you're very pretty. Really? Really. Then she held on to me a little tighter, and for the next half hour, Mary Elizabeth didn't talk at all. All I could do was lie there and think about how much her voice changed when she asked me if she was pretty, and how much she changed when I answered, and how Sam said she didn't like things like that, and how much my arm was beginning to hurt. Thank God we heard the automatic garage door opener when we did. Love always, Charlie.